audience, is Parul here again, your usual host, life and leadership coach. And I have got an exciting guest, special guest for you today. Sujata Tiwari, and Sujata will be talking about real life story. Real life is real life story. Sujata is an author, an entrepreneur, also a mentor with whole life experience. And I'm not going to say much about Sujata because I want you to hear from her own mouth and listen to very important top tips that Sujata will be sharing with us. Welcome, Sujata, and thank you for your time for our audience. What I would like you to do is introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and a bit about your story. And over to you.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Parul, for inviting me to your show. And I'm really honored to be in this space with you. So I'll start with actually what I'm currently doing and what I achieved, and which was that I became a self-published author. And my book is titled Against All Odds: No Retakes, No Manuals, Real Life Lessons. And this is the story of a woman. I have to say woman, though I don't believe in talking too much about gender as such. I try to be always gender neutral. But the fact is that if I'm a woman, then I'm a woman, right? And women have been, discriminated, marginalized from centuries and decades. I mean,
Absolutely.
If you go back right to the time that, people came on this planet, women have not found their place. And we talk a lot about the seat at the table now. But you know how hard and challenging it is for a woman. And in some countries and cultures, even more so.
Yes.
So this book is about my journey. And it was challenging because right from age 10, when I lost my father and I was brought up by my mother, who brought 3 daughters single-handedly, it was challenging because to be a beautiful widow and to have 3 daughters, and then you never had a college degree, you were, a high school student, and then you had to suddenly land up one day in bringing up 3 children. So those are challenging times. So since then I've been watching human beings, and if we live in the, like my book says, if we live in the jungle with animals, no problem. But if we live in civilized society, then you need this book, which I call it a legal life manual. So the various stages of my journey is growing up like that, then marrying the boy next door, which created a lot of storm because it's in India, as you know, if you marry out of caste or creed and all that, there's a lot of drama and tension and all that. And then I progressed to trying to be a housewife, and follow that role, but I didn't. I have a rebellious streak in me. So I always say that I'm not a biddable woman. And I decided to start a career. But to start a career, I had nothing in hand except for a bachelor's degree. I had no resume, no work experience. I was just a housewife. And I just went and looked for a job. And what was that job? It was not as if, I went to an office and said, okay, can I be the typist or the secretary or some admin. Yeah. I went straight to finding a job in sales and marketing of computers with no background prior experience. But my courage and resilience made me get that job without anything. And then I went into journalism. Then I went into anti-counterfeiting. These are all very specialized areas where you need those degrees and certificates. And I didn't have them, but I still got those jobs.
Is your willpower, because you wanted to make a difference.
So imagine me not being a lawyer, a retired lawyer or a cop or a judge, and I'm here going and handling investigations and raids and going through all those things and NGOs and giving lectures and talks. So that is how I fashioned my career from nothing. And fast forward that, I set up my business in foreign shows, which is also unthinkable without a business background to set up business in a foreign country as a foreign national. I did that. And I then even had a spiritual experience where I met God. And I not only met God, but I met God when it was the darkest hour of my life, when my daughter got raped, and I decided to fight for justice. Because as you know, and as the world knows, people generally don't take that step. for all the cases reported, there are thousands and thousands of cases where they never come forward to fight, to say that this has happened, and they brush it under the carpet. And this is with society's blessings. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is what my whole book is about. And I want, that's why I wrote my book when lockdown happened.
Yeah, now your book has been fascinating. I mean, I've listened a couple of chapters, on Clubhouse. It's been, fantastic. Really, I need to finish listening the whole lot. It's really
Yeah, because
good.
even the ones which are listening now in Clubhouse, the first person who read my book like this, for at a stretch, he went for hours, was Coach Les. He bought the book and then he read it in his room, and he's wanting to put it as as an audiobook or on YouTube or something. So just imagine. I mean, I was very humbled that a man, that too, okay, women might still do, but for a man to do that, but he did that. And then of course this my ever mindful family, they're also reading the book aloud. So yeah, so obviously the book has some merits and it touches every woman, I guess. That's why.
I think it touches every human being, because that's why I'm man ready, because what we want to audience, there are good people out there, whether men and women. Yes, there's a big population of women suffering, but there are good human too, and human mean men too. So it's come, it's more of those men coming forward and supporting women in the society as a equal human person, human, not just seeing women as a different gender and they are inferior. So is we need more of those. And as you say, society sometime, and also people sometimes afraid of society, so they don't come out because they don't want to share. They think it's shame, and that's why we see
there is a lot of stigma attached to it.
And Asian community is worse. Whether you live in India or Asian country or outside or even European countries, lots of girls I've seen is been like, don't talk about it.
Yes.
The parents or the relative would not let them talk about anything, any issue they think is against the society's agenda, or you'll be ashamed to talk about it. So you're living in India, coming out with speaking out for justice was not easy, and that clearly explained on your book, the way you explain step by steps, word by word, how you've been through it and how you seek justice. That's been phenomenal. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing your story.
One thing which you mentioned is about not only women, but about human beings. That's a very key point to raise, because in my book, it's not only about women or the injustices that I faced. It's also what I called about the good people, which you mentioned. There are good and bad people, right? And if I look back on my journey, then most of my human angels were curiously men. The breaks that I got in my journey were from men. It's not as if, some women, came up and offered me the job. When I went up, it was to a man. And when I sought justice, it was the cops who were my, absolute firm, rock solid, this thing, whereas the society just ostracized us. Nobody talked to us and put us on a side.
Thank you, Sujata. Yes, my next question will be is to go a bit more deep down. Now, obviously, you got quite a lot of experience, not just job experience, but life experience of dealing with trauma for yourself, your family, but also for your child. Now, can you share why you now decided to help others, especially women who's going through different types of tough time? And you're not just helping people locally, you're helping women internationally. You help people to resettle in other countries as well. Can you please elaborate why you've decided to help others?
Yes. So in my journey from a very young age, when I got married, then also I was actually mentoring, not coaching, but mentoring women. So, in your own social circle, you come across friends and families. And if you watch very carefully, you know that which family or which wife is going through a domestic abuse or a domestic violence case. If you're receptive and perceptive, you can see the signs. The question is, most people don't care or bother. But I always cared. I'm not only a people person, but I always cared for anybody, suffering out there. So I used to do that, you know, on the side of whatever else I was doing. I was always there, in support of doing this. But when I started, when lockdown happened, and when you had to pivot yourself, all my mentoring skills and all the certificates that I got in various fields, that came to the fore, because that's what COVID did. It forced us to look at other avenues. And then there was, everything was virtual. So now the world opened up, where it was not only locally, it was internationally, which you rightly said. And so now there I help people, and not only women, there are men also who reach out to me, and I help them in whatever aspect that they're dealing with, because trauma is trauma. It affects women and men, and sometimes even children. So even teenage children who are not able to speak to their parents, there is a communication gap which is there in our society. So if I know somebody's child who I can see the signs, and I offer to the parents that maybe I talk to the child, so that they may be comfortable talking to somebody. Or if people through word of mouth refer a child, because the child could be comfortable talking to a total stranger. Sometimes even being a total stranger will help, rather than, okay, this one is my parents friend, so they might still be on guard. But when it's a neutral person referred to by a teacher or by a counselor, then it helps. So that's what I do, because I went through it all alone, and I don't want anybody to be alone. So like I say, I'm everybody's 2 a.m 4 a.m friend.
Thank you, Sujata. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. You brought a couple of issues. Yes, domestic violence, traumas is not just affects one person, it affects the whole family, especially children. If they witness something from very early age, it stays in their mind for throughout. So it's really important for parents to seek how to make sure that child get the support as well. And as you say, sometimes is not the family member or friend who can help. The stranger, the outsider, who the child can trust and open up. They know they're not going to be judged. So, you mentioned finally, I also coach actually high school kids on building confidence and career coaching. And it's most fascinating journey when you help a child, because they're the easiest one to progress through, because they want to move forward. Then an adult sometimes find a bit more harder to move forward, because all the life experience that they've been through. So now great to hear how you're helping everyone. Now, what I want to ask you actually, from your experience, would like you to give some top tips for the victim who's going through or who's been through, whether that's domestic violence, rape, harassment, how they can build their confidence to move forward. And my second question will be, in line with the family member who's, especially certain community, we've seen Asian community, Arab communities, is whose daughter is being, raped, bullied, harassed, or divorced, like those family members, the suffering they've been through, but they don't have to live with the suffering. They can rise through. So some top tips for the victim and some top tips for the family members who is still struggling to move forward, please.
Okay. So first of all, the first tip that I will give to the victim, okay, is don't blame yourself. Okay, it's very, very important. Whosoever is the victim, whatever is the gender, don't blame yourself. Accept that something horrible has happened for which you are not responsible. Because most often, the biggest thing that is the drawback is that the victim feels responsible, guilt, and shame, which is being fed into through the society construct. But we must tell ourselves that we were not to be blamed. We are not responsible for that. Having once accepted that, give yourself for a little time to grieve, to get the shock of depending. For example, if it's a rape case or something, obviously you can't waste time. Even if you're in shock and grief, you have to take a few steps, for that 72-hour or 24 hours that you have to go and report and, let the people do their job in securing evidence and all. But if it's like, say, a domestic violence or a marital issue, or it is workplace harassment, then you can take time. First, take time, sort out yourself that you are going to do something about it. The question is, you always have a choice. You
Yes.
have the choice that are you going to give in? Are you going to compromise, or are you going to do something about it? Once you make up your will that you're going to do something about it, you put it down, and put it down sometimes in paper, sometimes in your mind. Then you go through an entire process of how to deal with it. So it's all different situations, like a household is different, workplace is different, because workplace harassment has also been on the increase, though we have so many laws and rules and this thing, but there is a lot of bullying and all which happens across the globe.
Absolutely,
so you have to decide case to case what you want to do and what steps are you going to do. So weigh your options, weigh your options. What is it that I can do? What are my resources? And then go about it. But see it through. Those are the things I would tell the victim. To the family, if the family is not in unity, like in a family, if 5 people are there, 2 people might be not wanting to deal with the situation. One might want to go on a tangent, and there might be 2 others who are not clear to support or not to support. So in that case, the victim will feel quite lonely. So the family has to understand that they're processing their grief in their own manner. All they need to do is to join together and say, this is not only one person's problem, this is our problem. And if they start supporting the victim wholeheartedly, they are in the process helping themselves. But if each one goes into their own shell, then it's very difficult. Then you have a battery of counselors, therapists for each person. And if they don't go for counseling therapy and they carry that baggage all through life, sometimes, they're going to live with all kinds of, what should I say? Their character is never going to heal, because they are going to carry it in their personal life, in their professional life. They will carry those baggage, and it may not be obviously apparent to people, but you will figure it out. So absolutely. Those are the reasons why families get overlooked, but families play a big part in the healing process. The victim can't do it alone, and it cannot be alone, because if you have a family, they're bound to be affected.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing a couple of points. I just want to recap. Obviously, for victim, seek support. Don't stay in a dark zone, because it's not your fault. Always pick up the phone or do something, ask a friend or family, seek help. And if it's a rape case, obviously you got a time limit, you have to seek for help within certain amount of time. If you have suffering from other issues, always seek help. There's a whole lot of resources out there. There's always people out there. Second thing, for victim, family is important to support your family member, whether they're your son, daughter, niece, nephews, whoever is, listen to them. It's really important to listen to them and don't blame them. Because as I say, blaming is not going to sort out any issue. Whatever happened is happened. So it's important you are there for them. As you say, Sujata, family help them with the healing. And healing is so important, because when you help your family member, you help yourself as well. Exactly. Because we both heal together. So it's really important to help each other and heal together. We only have one life. What's the point of living on the guilt, or living on the shame, or living on as a victim mode? I'm the victim. No.
And you never chose that to happen to you. Nobody in the right mind chooses these things, right?
It happens. Yes, it happens. But we can choose to live a good life. We can move forward.
Our response, we can choose what to do with that situation.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing, Sujata. Before I ask my next question, can you just hold your book on the screen, because I want our audience to see your book. It's been a fantastic book, Against All Odds, No Retake, No Manuals, Real Life Lesson by Sujata Tiwari. Fantastic books. I need to finish reading. I just, it's heartbreaking, real life, it's very touching. It touches my heart when I, listen to the audio, when you are reading it. So I will just say to audience, read it. It's really good. Loads of tips as well. So my last question, Sujata, is, if you were to leave a final thoughts for our audience, especially those who is still living in a victim mode, what would that be so they can move forward with their life?
So that's exactly the essence of the book, is that if you have nobody, no support, nothing, and you're alone, let that not stop you. You have one thing within you, and that nobody can take away, and that is courage. If you have the courage and you decide, that I will go ahead, you have the resilience and the courage and the strength, you will get over it. I do not use the word success here, but I use the word that you will overcome your life altering moment, and you can move on, to a certain extent, because some things don't totally go away, but you can lead a normal life if you decide to go over. A crime is a crime, and abuse is an abuse, and you just have to take that step. It's not easy, but you can do it. If I could do it, because trust me, I was all alone. And if I could do it, then so can you. That's what I would say to the
Thank you,
audience.
Sujata. Thank you.
Just say no and just take the step.
Yeah. Yeah, just a couple of points. Overcome to become, and you have to take the first step.
Yes.
To just that one first step will lead you to a better life, and you have a choice to have a better life, and you have the
Yes.
right and your duty to have a better life. So don't give
Absolutely.
up. Yes.
Yes.
Well, Sujata, thank you very much for your tips, and I'll put your details on the write up as well. So to audience, this is Parul, Life and Leadership Coach, as usual host. We bring people from all walk of life to give you some top tips, share their story, so that can motivate you, help you to build your own confidence and move forward with your life. And that's what we want, you to create the life you deserve. We only have one life, so don't give up. And please do share our videos, like our videos, and subscribe to it, so when we have the next video comes up, you'll know the next one's coming. And thank you very much, Sujata. Thanks for your time and your tips. And we'll see you next time, audience.